have always been a very big fantasy fan. I read Conan when I was 12 years old. That would have been 1959. I made my own fantasy games. I created them from scratch. Suddenly, about 1974, I began hearing about a new fantasy game where you could actually play the heroes going into stories. I knew this had to be my kind of game. I searched for it. It was not available in Arizona. Finally, I saw a copy in June 1975 while at a friend's house. I had arrived late and missed getting into the Risk game that everybody else was playing. So I sat down and I read first edition rules of Dungeons and Dragons. Not all of them, just bits and pieces, because they were long and hard to read and small print. And when I was finished, I said, what a great idea. What a terrible way to do it. What is half this crap? I will make my own version of this game, and it'll be something we can play. We'll just use 6-sided dice, 20-sided dice, 12-sided dice, 4-sided dice. I had never even heard of such things. They did not exist in Phoenix, Arizona. So I went to the library the next day. I checked out every book I could find about mythology and monsters and medieval weapons. And I went home and I read a whole bunch, and I started putting together a basic game system. Yes, it was modeled on that other game, I admit it. But it's not that other game. I didn't copy them. I wrote from scratch off the top of my head based on what I remembered of the principles involved. And that evolved into Tunnels and Trolls. It was kind of funny. We were playing it one of those first couple of weeks over at my friend Bear Peter's house. And we were calling it Dungeons and Dragons. But I told them we couldn't call it that I had come up with another name for the game. And because it involved caves so much, I thought we should call it Tunnels and Troglodytes. Because troglodytes are cavemen. And they laughed at me. They laughed very hard and said, no, Ken, it should be Tunnels and Trolls. And I can take an idea once in a while. And that's what it became. Yes, I discovered war games in high school. My first real war game was Battle of the Bulge. I played the French, of course, and the Americans, not the Germans. Something like that. I didn't discover it. It just sort of grew up everywhere around me. You have to understand, I was already in a fanish group, and we were already playing games on a regular basis all the time. I was already an adult, an old man, older than you, Gregoire, when this started to happen. I don't know if you would say a lot. I typed up a dozen pages that basically explained how to create a character and what weapons you could give him and a few of the magic spells you could use. And I called all my friends over the next weekend and we tried it out. And based on what they told me and what I learned, I went back and I just typed it up again. And this time it came to about 40 pages and it looked like this. Except that it didn't have nice covers and art. it was just all typing. And then my friends borrowed my manuscript and took it away and photocopied it and spilled coffee on it and dog-eared the pages and totally destroyed my week of hard typing. So I said, I've got to publish this so that they can have their own copies and not screw up mine. So I talked to my friends Mark Anthony and Rob Carver, and I got some illustrations. We got them all by sitting at Rob's house one afternoon and making him draw until we had something for almost every page, which is why they all look like cartoons. And this was one of his real illustrations that he had sitting around he wasn't doing anything with. This was one that he came up and said, I have a great illustration for you, Ken. He drew them. We took Scotch tape and put them on the manuscript, right on the spot. Mark and Rob and me. We decided where it would fit and we taped it in, and by the time we were done, I had this whole manuscript ready to go and took it off to the printer the next weekend. Not a lot of high-end, expensive development going on in 1975. I never actually met Gary Gygax. I was in the same building with him sometimes, but we were not friends. We never spoke face to face. We never exchanged letters. We knew about each other, and I think that's as close as it ever came. On the other hand, Rick Loomis and Dave Arneson were good friends. Dave invested in Rick's company, Flying Buffalo, and came and spent time in Phoenix several times. I knew Dave Arneson very well. I talked to him, I played games with him, I was game master, he was game master, we played chess, we went out to breakfast together and supper together in Indianapolis at Origins conventions. Dave was a wonderful guy. I knew him and liked him very much. You understand that the first edition, white box edition of Dungeons & Dragons came out before Tunnels and Trolls did. I never read the whole thing. I do not know if the words Dungeon Master appear in that or not. I believe they do appear in Tunnels and Trolls, that you have to dig the dungeon and be the Dungeon Master. I could probably look that up. So if it wasn't in the first edition of Dungeons & Dragons, then yes, I said it first. But if they used it, then they said it first. Surely, with hundreds or thousands of gamers playing this new game around the country between December, when they put it out, and June, when I first saw it, somebody must have said Dungeon Master in all that time. I might have been the first to put it down in writing in a published game, but that's probably the best you could say. The Japanese do not like to be left behind in any field of endeavor. Japanese gamers learned about American role-playing gaming, and of course they wanted to try it. Tunnels and Trolls appeared in Japan before Dungeons and Dragons did. We made a deal with Mr. Yasuda. Tunnels and Trolls appeared in Britain before Dungeons and Dragons did. I think it probably appeared in France and Germany before that other game did. That's because we're smaller. we move faster, and we don't charge as much to license it.
Hello, I am a troll. I live here with Ken, in the troll cave, and guard his books.
In 1983, I was invited to attend Games Day in England. And since I was that close, I got in touch with the people who had published the first French edition of Tunnels and Trolls, not the current one, and said, I'm close, can we do anything? They said, sure, come to Paris, we'll interview you and buy you lunch. So I bought a channel ticket and I rode over one night and I rode the trains and I got to Paris and I had lunch. I knew I was going to do this months in advance, so I had booked a hotel. And that's it. I spent, 4 whole days in France. That's all the time I have ever spent there. Chris Harvey put out the first Tunnels and Trolls foreign edition in England in 1981 or something like that. And then he didn't make a fortune at it, so he sold the idea to Corgi Books. And Corgi Books sold the idea to the French and the Italians and the Japanese, and they sub-licensed it off in all directions, which is why Tunnels and Trolls got all over the world very early. But it never had very much money behind it, so it never got big. This is the first edition of Stormbringer, published by the Chaosium, autographed for me by Greg Stafford and the Chaosium staff. Arizona and California are close together. Arizonans frequently go to California science fiction and gaming conventions, and I went. I knew Greg Stafford and a few of the other guys at the Chaosium. I was in touch with them when they decided that they were going to license Stormbringer and produce it. I heard that another gamer that I didn't have very much respect for was trying to get the job. So I decided that I would try to get the job to save the game from anything that Rudy could do to it. I wrote Greg Stafford a letter and submitted a proposal for what I thought the Stormbringer game should be. Greg liked my idea better than he liked Rudy's idea, and that's why I got to do Stormbringer instead of Rudy Kraft doing the first edition of it. No, I never met Michael Moorcock. I have never even seen the man in person. I was a big fan simply by reading the books. Isn't everyone a video game player? Of course I played video games. From the beginning. From Pong. Right? I was there at the beginning of all this stuff. How Brian Fargo and I got together is a strange story. There is a man, I think he may be dead now, named Bob Liddell, Liddil. Bob knew about Tunnels and Trolls. He was going to California to interview for a job with Brian Fargo and Interplay. On his way, he stopped in Phoenix and spent a night talking to me and Mike Stackpole. Then he went to California and got his interview with Brian and told Brian about spending time with Mike and me in Phoenix and about Tunnels and Trolls and what a great game it was. Bob did not get the job, but Brian decided that Tunnels and Trolls sounded very interesting, so he called me and arranged to come to Phoenix and talk to me about doing a game on his new programming system that Pavlish had developed for a post-atomic war role-playing game. The idea was to do Red Dawn, Iowa farmers against occupying Russian troops. I wrote up a scenario for that and decided it was very boring. So I wrote up a different scenario where I sort of mixed Daffy Duck with Terminator movies and put it in Arizona, and that became Wasteland. Because Brian agreed with me. The Wasteland adventure with crazy Terminator robots was much more fun to play than farmers trying to fight it out with Russian troops. How did it feel? It felt good. I always wanted to do computer games. Not video games per se, but computer games. And I made some for myself on the Commodore 64 and the Apple II in Phoenix. But they were terrible. To work with a real programming company like Interplay was a dream come true. And yes, of course I was a video game player. La 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 la. People write to me from all over the world. France, Japan, Australia, and sometimes things come of it. Patrice wrote to me from Belgium and presented a plan to do some French Tunnels and Trolls and to do a French edition. It was his idea. He did a beautiful job. Well, the rule is you can never find something when you want it. But Patrice does nice work. We were very impressed by the French edition of Tunnels and Trolls. Steve Crompton worked very hard with him to help with the layout. Liz Danforth did original art. I explained how things had changed between 5th edition and 7.5 edition. And we were very pleased with what he did, and we still are. We think it was great and beautiful, and we felt sorry for American gamers who would not be able to see this really nice new edition of Tunnels and Trolls because 99% of us don't speak any French at all. So a few people learn it in high school or college, and the rest of us don't speak French. And then there are people like me who speak just un peu. Just enough to get myself in trouble if I should ever meet a mademoiselle. Okay, so we really liked his edition, and we liked it so much that we decided that we should do a better edition in America. And that's where Deluxe Tunnels and Trolls came from. So his little bitty French edition, which was like the 5th edition, only in French, with some updates from the 7th edition, decided to turn into this instead. But Patrice was our inspiration and a big help in actually getting this produced. He's in the dedication. You understand, I hope, that Deluxe is not a numbered edition of Tunnels and Trolls. It is not the 9th edition, or the 8th English edition, or the 10th English edition. It is simply the Deluxe edition. We're breaking with the whole tradition of numbering things, and we're going to just name them. So this is the Deluxe edition of Tunnels and Trolls, and if we do something after this, it will be the post-apocalyptic edition, but it will not be the 11th edition. So Patrice has the last edition. He has the 8th edition. There is no English 8th edition. There is no English 6th edition. Well, there are. There's 2 of them. One by a pirate in the US and another by a pirate in the UK. And I've seen them both. They were both numbered 6th edition. So I skipped the 6th edition here and went straight from the 5th edition to the 7th edition. Or actually 5.5 to 7. We have an American saying, "You've come a long way, baby." Role-playing has come a long, long way in the last 40 years. And my game, the other game, all the other games, video gaming, MUDs, it's like a whole family of games based on the same idea. I think it's great. I look forward to the continued evolution of role-playing into virtual reality.